Marcus Chen walked into the music room with his head down. He always tried to be invisible in this class. The room was full of students who seemed to know everything about music. Some could play the piano like they were born with magic fingers. Others could sing so well that teachers stopped to listen. Marcus was not one of these students. He found his usual seat in the back corner. The chair was old and made a small squeak when he sat down. Marcus liked this spot because Mrs. Rodriguez, the music teacher, rarely looked his way. She was always busy helping the talented students or getting ready for some big performance. Marcus had been taking piano lessons for 2 years now. His mother had signed him up because she thought it would be good for him. She said music would help him become more confident. But Marcus did not feel confident at all. He could play simple songs, but even those gave him trouble. His fingers felt clumsy on the keys. When he tried to play faster pieces, everything went wrong. The other kids in his piano lesson group were much better than him. There was Sarah, who could play difficult songs without even looking at the music. There was Tommy, who had won prizes in piano competitions. Marcus felt like he did not belong with them. His piano teacher, Mr. Kim, was always patient with him. But Marcus could see the worry in his eyes. At school, Marcus tried to stay quiet during music class. When Mrs. Rodriguez asked questions, he never raised his hand. When she needed volunteers to sing or play instruments, Marcus looked down at his desk and hoped she would not notice him. This plan had worked well for almost the whole school year. Marcus was 12 years old and in 7th grade. He was not the smartest kid in school, but he was not the worst either. His grades were okay. He had a few friends, but he was not popular. He played video games and liked to read books about adventure stories. In those books, ordinary people often became heroes. But Marcus did not think that would ever happen to him in real life. The music room had big windows that looked out at the school playground. Marcus often stared out these windows during class. He watched other students playing sports or just talking with their friends. Sometimes he wished he was out there instead of in music class. But his schedule said he had to be here, so here he was. Mrs. Rodriguez was writing something on the whiteboard at the front of the room. She was a short woman with curly hair and bright red glasses. She always wore colorful clothes and big earrings that made noise when she moved her head. She had been teaching at the school for 15 years. All the students knew she loved music more than anything else in the world. The clock on the wall showed that class was almost over. Marcus started to pack his things into his backpack. He was looking forward to lunch, where he could sit with his friend Jake and talk about normal things like sports and movies. Jake did not take music class because he was in the advanced math group instead. Marcus sometimes wished he was smart enough for advanced math, but then Mrs. Rodriguez clapped her hands loudly. All the students stopped what they were doing and looked at her. She had a big smile on her face, which usually meant she had some kind of announcement. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. He did not like announcements in music class, because they usually meant more work or some kind of performance. Mrs. Rodriguez walked to the center of the room. She looked excited about something. Her earrings made little jingling sounds as she moved. She cleared her throat and began to speak in her loud, cheerful voice. "Students, I have wonderful news," she said. "Our spring recital is coming up in 2 months. This year, it will be bigger and better than ever before. Every single student in this class will perform a solo piece." Marcus felt like someone had just told him he would have to jump off a tall building. A solo piece meant he would have to play piano by himself, on a stage in front of lots of people. His hands started to feel sweaty just thinking about it. Some students looked excited. Sarah raised her hand and asked if she could play a piece by Mozart. Tommy wanted to know if he could play something he had learned at his private lessons. But Marcus just sat in his chair, hoping this was all a bad dream. Mrs. Rodriguez continued talking about the recital. She said it would be held in the school auditorium. Parents and families would come to watch. There would be programs printed with everyone's names. Some students would play piano, others would sing, and a few might play other instruments like violin or flute. Marcus had never performed music in front of anyone except his family. Even at home, he felt nervous when his little sister Emma listened to him practice. She was only 8 years old, but she always had opinions about his playing. Usually her opinions were not very nice. The bell rang and students started to leave. For lunch, Marcus packed his backpack slowly, hoping everyone else would leave first. He did not want to talk to anyone about the recital. He especially did not want Mrs. Rodriguez to notice him and start asking what piece he wanted to play, but as he stood up to leave, Mrs. Rodriguez called his name. "Marcus, could you stay for just a minute? I want to talk to you about something." Marcus felt his face get hot. His heart started beating faster. He walked slowly to the front of the room where Mrs. Rodriguez was standing. She was still smiling, but now Marcus thought her smile looked a little too bright, like she was trying to hide something. "Marcus," she said in a softer voice, "I know you might be nervous about the recital, but I think this will be a great chance for you to show what you can do. Sometimes we surprise ourselves when we try new things." Marcus nodded, but he did not say anything. He wanted to tell her that he was not ready for a recital. He wanted to explain that he could barely play the easy songs Mr. Kim had given him. But the words would not come out of his mouth. Mrs. Rodriguez patted his shoulder gently. "Don't worry too much about it right now. We have plenty of time to prepare. I'll help you choose the perfect piece for your skill level." As Marcus finally left the music room, he felt like a heavy weight was sitting on his chest. 2 months seemed like no time at all to get ready for something so scary. He walked to the cafeteria, but he was not hungry anymore. The spring recital was going to change everything, and Marcus was not sure he was ready for any changes at all. 3 days passed since Mrs. Rodriguez announced the recital. Marcus had tried not to think about it, but it was always there in the back of his mind. Every time he saw the music room, his stomach felt funny. Every time someone mentioned piano or music, he wanted to disappear. On Thursday afternoon, Marcus was putting books in his locker when he heard his name called over the school's speaker system. "Marcus Chun, please report to the music room." "Marcus Chun to the music room, please." Other students looked at him with curious eyes. Marcus felt his face turn red. He had never been called to any room over the speaker before. This could not be good news. He walked slowly through the hallways. His shoes made squeaking sounds on the shiny floor. The music room was on the other side of the school, and the walk felt like it took forever. Marcus hoped that maybe Mrs. Rodriguez just wanted to tell him he did not have to be in the recital after all. Maybe she had changed her mind when he reached the music room. The door was open. Mrs. Rodriguez was sitting at her desk with a thick folder in front of her. The folder was full of sheet music. Marcus could see the papers sticking out from all sides. His heart started beating faster. "Come in, Marcus," Mrs. Rodriguez said with her usual smile. "Close the door and have a seat?" Marcus did as she asked. He sat in a chair next to her desk instead of his usual spot in the back. Being this close to the teacher felt strange. He could smell her flowery perfume and see the tiny wrinkles around her eyes. Mrs. Rodriguez opened the thick folder and started looking through the papers. "I've been thinking about what piece would be perfect for you to play at the recital," she said. "I want to challenge you, but I also want to make sure you can be successful." Marcus nodded, even though he was not sure what she meant by challenge. He hoped she meant something easy that would not make him look foolish in front of everyone. Mrs. Rodriguez pulled out a piece of sheet music and placed it in front of Marcus. The title at the top said, "Minute Waltz by Frédéric Chopin." Marcus had heard this name before. Chopin was a famous composer who wrote very difficult piano music. Marcus felt a cold feeling in his stomach. "This is a beautiful piece," Mrs. Rodriguez said, pointing to the music. "It's energetic and exciting. I think it will suit you perfectly." Marcus looked at the sheet music. There were notes everywhere. Some parts had so many notes that they looked like tiny black ants crawling all over the page. Other parts had strange symbols that Marcus did not recognize. This was definitely not the kind of simple music he was used to playing. "Mrs. Rodriguez," Marcus said quietly, "I think there might be a mistake. This looks really hard. I can barely play Für Elise without messing up." Mrs. Rodriguez leaned back in her chair. Marcus, I know it looks difficult now, but you have 2 months to learn it. That's plenty of time if you practice every day. Besides, I wouldn't give this to you if I didn't think you could do it. Marcus wanted to argue with her. He wanted to explain that he was not like the other students in the class. He was not talented or special. He was just ordinary Marcus who could not even play simple songs very well. But Mrs. Rodriguez was the teacher, and teachers always knew better than students. At least that's what adults always said. But why this? Peace? Marcus asked. Why not something easier? Mrs. Rodriguez folded her hands together. Well, to be honest, we had some changes with our advanced students. 3 of them dropped out of the recital at the last minute. They decided to focus on their other activities instead. I had already planned the program, and now I need someone to fill those spots with more challenging pieces. Marcus felt confused. So you want me to play this because other students quit? Not exactly, Mrs. Rodriguez said quickly. I chose you because I believe you have potential that you haven't discovered yet. Sometimes students surprise themselves when they're pushed. A little harder, I've seen it happen many times. Marcus looked at the sheet music again. The notes seemed to dance around on the page, making him feel dizzy. He had never tried to play anything this complicated. Even the name Minute Waltz sounded scary. He wondered if it meant he had to play it in 1 minute. That would be impossible. How long is this piece? Marcus asked. About 2 minutes when played at the proper speed, Mrs. Rodriguez answered. But don't worry about speed right now. Focus on learning the notes first. Speed will come later with practice. 2 minutes felt like a very long time to Marcus. 2 minutes of playing difficult music in front of lots of people. 2 minutes where everything could go wrong. He imagined himself on stage, forgetting the notes, his hands shaking, everyone. Watching him fail, Mrs. Rodriguez must have seen the worried look on his face. Marcus, I want you to trust me on this. I've been teaching music for 15 years. I can tell when a student is ready for a challenge, even if they don't know it themselves. She reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a CD. Here's a recording of the piece. Take it home and listen to it several times. Get familiar with how it should sound. Then start working on the first page slowly. Marcus took the CD and the sheet music. They felt heavy in his hands, like they weighed much more than they should. What if I can't learn it in time? Then we'll figure something else out, Mrs. Rodriguez said. But I have a feeling you're going to surprise everyone, including yourself. The bell rang, which meant it was time for the next class. Marcus stood up from his chair, still holding the music and CD. He felt like he was carrying a heavy burden that he did not want. Marcus, Mrs. Rodriguez called as he reached the door. Remember, every professional musician started as a beginner. Every expert was once a disaster. The only difference between them and everyone else is that they didn't give up. Marcus nodded and left the room. In the hallway, students rushed past him on their way to their next classes. He walked slowly, thinking about what had just happened. Mrs. Rodriguez had basically told him he had to learn one of the most difficult pieces he had ever seen. She seemed to think he could do it, but Marcus was not so sure. That evening at home, Marcus sat in his room with the CD player his parents had given him for his birthday. He put in the Chopin CD and pressed play. The music that came out was beautiful but very fast and complicated. It sounded like something a professional pianist would play in a fancy concert hall. It definitely did not sound like something Marcus could ever play. He listened to the piece 3 times in a row. Each time it sounded more impossible. The notes moved so quickly that Marcus could not imagine his fingers ever being able to keep up. There were parts that went up and down the piano keyboard like a musical roller coaster. His little sister Emma knocked on his door. "What's that music?" she asked when he let her in. "It's something I'm supposed to learn for the school recital," Marcus said. Emma listened for a minute. "It sounds really hard. Are you sure you can play that?" Marcus sighed. "No, I'm not sure at all. But Mrs. Rodriguez thinks I can do it." Emma sat on his bed and listened to more of the music. "Well, if the teacher thinks you can do it, maybe you can. Teachers know about these things." Marcus hoped his little sister was right, but as he listened to the Chopin waltz one more time, he felt more worried than ever. Tomorrow he would have to start trying to learn this impossible piece of music. He had no idea where to even begin. The next day after school, Marcus sat at the old piano in his living room. The sheet music for the Minute Waltz was spread out in front of him on the music stand. He had been staring at it for 10 minutes, trying to figure out where to start. The first page alone had more notes than he usually played in an entire week. Marcus placed his hands on the piano keys. He tried to play the first few measures slowly. The sounds that came out were terrible. His left hand was supposed to play a steady rhythm while his right hand played a fast melody. But Marcus could not make his hands do different things at the same time. Everything sounded jumbled and wrong. What is that noise? Emma called from the kitchen where she was doing homework. I'm practicing, Marcus called back, feeling embarrassed. It doesn't sound like music, Emma said. It sounds like someone dropped all the piano keys on the floor. Marcus stopped playing and put his head in his hands. Emma was right. It did not sound like music at all. It sounded like a disaster. He had been practicing for only 20 minutes, and already he wanted to give up. He tried again, this time playing even slower. He focused on just the right-hand melody first, ignoring the left hand completely. But even the melody was full of fast runs and tricky finger movements. His fingers stumbled over the keys like they were trying to run in shoes that were too big. Marcus's mother came into the living room. She was still wearing her work clothes and looked tired from her long day at the office. How's the practice going, honey? She asked. Terrible, Marcus said honestly. I can't play this piece. Mrs. Rodriguez made a big mistake. His mother sat down on the couch behind him. Let me hear what you're working on. Marcus played the first few measures again. The sounds were still awful, but at least his mother was trying to be supportive. When he finished, she clapped softly. It's a beautiful piece, she said, very ambitious. Ambitious was just a nice way of saying too hard, Marcus thought. Mom, what if I can't learn it? What if I embarrass myself at the recital? His mother was quiet for a moment. Marcus, do you remember when you first started taking piano lessons? You couldn't even play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star without making mistakes. But now you can play lots of songs that seemed impossible back then? Marcus remembered those early days. Everything had seemed hard then too, but this was different. This was much, much harder than anything he had ever tried before. This is different, Mom. This is real composer music. This is the kind of stuff that professional pianists play. Maybe that's exactly why Mrs. Rodriguez chose it for you, his mother said. Maybe she sees something in you that you don't see yet. After his mother left the room, Marcus tried practicing for another hour. By the end, his fingers hurt and his head ached. He had managed to play the first page, but it still sounded terrible. The notes were all there, but they did not flow together like music. They sounded choppy and uneven, like a car with a broken engine. The next day at school, Marcus dreaded music class. He did not want to face Mrs. Rodriguez and have to tell her that he was already struggling. But when he walked into the music room, she smiled at him like always. How did the first practice session go? She asked before class started. Not very well, Marcus admitted. It's really hard. Of course it is, Mrs. Rodriguez said. All good music is hard at first. That's what makes it worth learning. During class, Mrs. Rodriguez talked about the upcoming recital. She mentioned that some students would be playing very challenging pieces this year. When she said this, a few students looked at Marcus with surprise. Word had gotten around that he had been given a difficult piece to play. After class, Sarah, one of the best piano students, came up to Marcus. I heard you're playing the Minute Waltz, she said. That's a really hard piece. I tried to learn it last year, but my teacher said I wasn't ready yet. Marcus felt even worse. If Sarah, who was much better than him, was not ready for this piece, how could he possibly learn it? Tommy, another advanced student, joined the conversation. Yeah, that piece is crazy fast. You have to practice it for like a year to get it right. Are you sure Mrs. Rodriguez gave you the right music? Marcus wanted to disappear. These students were making him feel even more hopeless about the whole situation. I don't know, he said quietly. Maybe there was a mistake. During lunch, Marcus sat with his friend Jake and told him about his piano problems. Jake was not in music class, so he did not know much about classical music. But he listened while Marcus explained how impossible the piece seemed. "Maybe you should just tell the teacher you can't do it," Jake suggested while eating his sandwich. "I mean, if it's too hard, it's too hard, right?" Marcus had thought about that. But something stopped him from going to Mrs. Rodriguez and asking for an easier piece. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was curiosity. Or maybe it was the look in Mrs. Rodriguez's eyes when she said she believed in him that afternoon. Marcus tried practicing again. This time he decided to work on just one small section at a time. He chose 4 measures in the middle of the first page and played them over and over. After 30 minutes, those 4 measures started to sound a little better. Not good, but better. Emma came into the living room while he was practicing. She sat on the couch and listened for a while. "That part sounds nice," she said about the section he had been working on. "Really?" Marcus asked, stopping to look at her. "Yeah, it's starting to sound like actual music instead of noise." Marcus felt a tiny bit of hope. Maybe if he could learn 4 measures, he could eventually learn 8 measures. And if he could learn 8 measures, maybe he could learn the whole piece. It would just take a very long time and a lot of work, but that night, lying in bed, Marcus still felt worried. He had 7.5 weeks until the recital. The piece was 4 pages long. At the rate he was going, learning 4 measures every few days, he would never finish in time. And even if he did learn all the notes, would it sound good enough to perform in front of people? Marcus thought about all the spring recitals he had seen in previous years. The advanced students always sounded perfect. Their fingers moved smoothly across the keys like they were dancing. The music flowed out of the piano like it was the most natural thing in the world. Marcus could not imagine ever playing like that. He also thought about what would happen if he failed. What if he got on stage and forgot the music completely? What if his hands shook so much that he could not play at all? What if everyone laughed at him? The thought made his stomach feel sick, but then he remembered what his mother had said about "Twinkle, twinkle, little star." She was right that everything seemed impossible when he first started piano lessons. Maybe this piece was just another step in learning to play better. Maybe Mrs. Rodriguez really did know what she was doing. Marcus decided he would try for one more week. If he could not make any real progress by then, he would go to Mrs. Rodriguez and ask for an easier piece. He would tell her that he appreciated her confidence in him, but that this piece was just too advanced for his current level. As he fell asleep, Marcus could hear the melody of the minute waltz playing in his head. It was beautiful music, even if he could not play it yet. He wondered what it would feel like to actually make those sounds come out of a piano with his own hands. It seemed like an impossible dream, but maybe, just maybe, it could happen. 2 weeks had passed since Marcus started trying to learn the minute waltz. His progress was very slow. He could now play the first page, but it still did not sound very good. The notes were there, but the rhythm was uneven and his fingers felt clumsy. He was getting frustrated and thinking more seriously about asking Mrs. Rodriguez for an easier piece. On Thursday afternoon, Marcus decided to stay after school to practice in one of the empty classrooms. The school had several old pianos in different rooms, and students were allowed to use them for practice if a teacher was nearby. Marcus thought maybe a change of location would help him play better. He found an empty classroom on the 2nd floor and sat down at the old upright piano. The keys were more yellow than the piano at home, and some of them stuck a little when he pressed them. But it was quiet here, and no one would bother him or make comments about his playing. Marcus opened his sheet music and started working on the 2nd page of the waltz. This section was even harder than the first page. There were fast runs that went up and down the keyboard, and his fingers kept getting tangled up. After 20 minutes of struggling, he put his head down on the piano keys in frustration. That sounded pretty good for such a difficult piece. Marcus jumped up, startled. He turned around to see Mr. Patterson, the school janitor, standing in the doorway. Mr. Patterson was an older man with gray hair and kind eyes. He was pushing a cart full of cleaning supplies. "Oh, hi, Mr. Patterson," Marcus said, feeling embarrassed. I was just practicing. I'll leave if you need to clean in here. No need to leave, Mr. Patterson said, parking his cart near the door. I was just curious about the music. That's Chopin, isn't it? The Minute Waltz? Marcus was surprised. He did not expect the janitor to know classical music. Yes, it is. I'm supposed to play it at the spring recital, but I'm not very good at it yet. Mr. Patterson walked closer to the piano. Mind if I listen for a minute? I haven't heard that piece in a long time. Marcus felt nervous about playing in front of anyone, even the janitor. But Mr. Patterson seemed genuinely interested, so Marcus played the first page again. It was still not perfect, but it was better than when he had started. When Marcus finished, Mr. Patterson nodded thoughtfully. You know, I used to play piano, he said. Jazz mostly, but I learned some classical pieces too. That waltz was one of them. Really? Marcus asked. You play piano? Mr. Patterson smiled. Used to play a lot more than I do now. Started when I was about your age. My grandmother taught me. She said music was the language of the soul. Marcus had never thought of Mr. Patterson as anything other than the person who cleaned the school. It was strange to think that he had a whole other life with music and piano playing. I'm having a really hard time with this piece, Marcus said. My teacher thinks I can learn it, but I'm not so sure. It's way harder than anything I've ever tried before. Mr. Patterson sat down in one of the student desks. Can I tell you something? When I was about 14, my grandmother gave me a piece that seemed impossible. It was a Chopin nocturne, which is different from a waltz, but just as tricky. I told her it was too hard, and she said something I'll never forget. What did she say? Marcus asked. She said, the music isn't hard, boy. It's just unfamiliar. Every note on that page is the same note you already know how to play. The only difference is the order and the timing. She was right, you know. Every note in that waltz is a note you can already play. You just need to teach your fingers the right order. Marcus looked at his sheet music with new eyes. Mr. Patterson was right. Every single note was a note he knew. C, D, E, F, G, A, B he had been playing these same notes for 2 years. The piece was not asking him to do anything impossible. It was just asking him to play familiar notes in a new pattern. But it's so fast, Marcus said, and my hands have to do different things at the same time. Mr. Patterson stood up and walked over to the piano. May I? He asked, gesturing to the bench. Marcus moved over, and Mr. Patterson sat down. He placed his hands on the keys and started playing the Minute Waltz, but he played it very slowly, much slower than Marcus had ever heard. At this slow speed, Marcus could hear every individual note clearly. He could see how the melody and the accompaniment fit together. The secret, Mr. Patterson said while playing, is not to think of it as one impossible thing. Think of it as lots of small, possible things. Learn one measure perfectly. Then learn the next measure perfectly. Then put them together. He stopped playing and turned to Marcus. And never practice it fast until you can play it slow without any mistakes. Speed comes naturally when your fingers know exactly where to go. Marcus felt something like hope starting to grow in his chest. Could you maybe help me with it sometimes? I mean, if you're not too busy, Mr. Patterson smiled. I'd be happy to help. I have some time during lunch breaks when this floor is quiet. We could meet here a couple times a week if you want. Really? You would do that? Son, good music is too important not to share. Besides, it would be fun for me to work on that piece again. It's been years since I've played it. They agreed to meet the next day during lunch. As Mr. Patterson gathered his cleaning supplies to leave, he turned back to Marcus. Remember what I told you about the notes being familiar? That applies to more than just music. Most things that seem impossible are really just combinations of things you already know how to do. The trick is breaking them down into smaller pieces. That evening, Marcus practiced with a completely different attitude. Instead of trying to play long sections of the piece, he focused on just 1 or 2 measures at a time. He played them slowly, making sure every note was clear and every finger movement was deliberate. When Emma came to listen, she noticed the difference immediately. That sounds much better, she said. It actually sounds like music now. Marcus's mother also commented on the improvement when she got home from work. I can hear the melody clearly now, she said. Whatever you're doing differently, keep doing it. That night, Marcus lay in bed thinking about his conversation with Mr. Patterson. It was amazing that the school janitor was also a piano player. It made Marcus wonder what other hidden talents people had that he never knew about. Maybe there were lots of people around him who had interesting stories and skills. He also thought about what Mr. Patterson had said about breaking impossible things into smaller pieces. Marcus realized he had been thinking about the waltz as one huge, scary task. But really, it was just lots of small tasks that he could handle one at a time. For the first time since Mrs. Rodriguez had given him the music, Marcus felt like possibly he might actually be able to learn this piece. It would still be hard work and it would take a lot of practice, but with Mr. Patterson's help and this new approach, it did not seem completely impossible anymore. Marcus was excited about their practice session tomorrow. He had never had a music teacher other than Mr. Kim, his regular piano instructor. It would be interesting to learn from someone who played jazz and had a completely different style. Maybe Mr. Patterson would teach him things that no one else could as he drifted off to sleep. Marcus found himself looking forward to practicing piano for the first time in weeks. The minute waltz was still difficult, but now it felt like a challenge. He might actually be able to meet rather than an impossible mountain he could never climb. The next day at lunch, Marcus hurried up to the second-floor classroom where he had met Mr. Patterson. He brought his sheet music and a notebook to write down any tips Mr. Patterson might give him. Marcus had been thinking about their conversation all morning and was eager to start learning from someone who actually knew how to play the piece. Mr. Patterson was already there, sitting at the piano and quietly playing something that sounded like jazz. His fingers moved smoothly across the keys, making the old piano sound better than Marcus had ever heard it. When Mr. Patterson saw Marcus come in, he finished his song and smiled. "Ready to work on that waltz?" Mr. Patterson asked. "Yes, sir," Marcus said, sitting down next to him on the piano bench. "First things first," Mr. Patterson said. "Play me what you've got so far, but slowly. Don't worry about making it sound perfect. I just want to see where you are." Marcus played the first page of the waltz at a careful, slow pace. He made a few small mistakes, but overall it was much better than when he had first started learning the piece. When he finished, Mr. Patterson nodded thoughtfully. "Not bad at all," he said. "I can tell you've been working on it. But I notice you're holding a lot of tension in your hands and shoulders. That's going to make the fast parts much harder than they need to be." Mr. Patterson showed Marcus how to relax his wrists and keep his shoulders down. "Playing piano should never hurt," he explained. "If your hands or arms start to ache, you're working too hard. The music should flow out of you, not be forced." They spent the first part of their practice session just working on hand position and relaxation. Mr. Patterson had Marcus play simple scales while focusing on keeping his hands loose and comfortable. It felt strange at first, but Marcus could tell the difference immediately. The notes sounded clearer and his fingers moved more easily. "Now," Mr. Patterson said, "let's talk about rhythm. This is a waltz, which means it has a specific kind of beat. Listen." He played a simple waltz rhythm with his left hand. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, he counted out loud. The first beat is always a little stronger than the other two. Think of it like a dance. Marcus had never thought about the waltz as dance music before. But when Mr. Patterson explained it that way, the rhythm made more sense. They practiced clapping the waltz rhythm together, then Marcus tried playing just the left-hand part while counting. "The left hand is like the drummer in a band," Mr. Patterson explained. "It keeps everyone else in time. Once your left hand knows the rhythm perfectly, your right hand can play the melody on top of it." This was a completely different way of thinking about the piece than anything Marcus had learned before. His regular piano teacher, Mr. Kim, had always focused on reading the notes correctly. But Mr. Patterson was teaching him about the music. Behind the notes, they worked on just the left-hand rhythm for most of their lunch period. It was not as exciting as playing the melody, but Marcus could feel how important it was. When his left hand was steady and confident, everything else felt easier. Same time tomorrow? Mr. Patterson asked as they cleaned up. Definitely, Marcus said. Thank you so much for helping me. My pleasure, Mr. Patterson replied. You're a good student. You listen carefully and you're willing to work hard. That's all anyone needs to learn music. That afternoon in regular music class, Mrs. Rodriguez asked how everyone was doing with their recital pieces. Several students raised their hands to share their progress. Sarah said she had almost finished learning her Mozart sonata. Tommy reported that he was working on the fast sections of his batch invention. When Mrs. Rodriguez looked at Marcus, he felt nervous but also a little excited. I'm making progress, he said. Mr. Patterson has been helping me during lunch. Mrs. Rodriguez looked surprised. Mr. Patterson, our custodian? Yes, Marcus said. He used to play piano. He's teaching me about rhythm and hand position, Mrs. Rodriguez smiled. How wonderful. I had no idea Mr. Patterson was musical. That's exactly the kind of extra help that can make all the difference. But Marcus noticed that some of the other students looked skeptical. After class, Sarah came up to him with a concerned expression. Marcus, are you sure the janitor knows what he's talking about? She asked. I mean, no offense, but shouldn't you be getting help from a real piano teacher? Tommy nodded in agreement. Yeah, my private teacher has degrees from a music conservatory. That's really different from just playing piano as a hobby. Marcus felt his confidence start to slip. Maybe they were right. Maybe Mr. Patterson was just being nice, but he did not really know enough to help with such a difficult piece. Maybe Marcus was wasting his time and would end up even more behind than before. That evening at home, Marcus sat at the piano feeling confused and discouraged. He tried to practice the way Mr. Patterson had shown him, focusing on the left-hand rhythm. But now he wondered if he was learning it wrong. What if Mr. Patterson's way was not the right way? What if he was picking up bad habits that would make his playing worse? His mother noticed his frustrated mood during dinner. How did your practice session with Mr. Patterson go today? She asked. It was good, I think, Marcus said. But some kids at school said I should only get help from real teachers. His father looked up from his food. What makes someone a real teacher? He asked. Marcus thought about this. I guess someone with formal training. Someone who went to school to learn how to teach music. His father said. I learned to fix cars from my uncle, who learned from his father. None of them went to mechanic school, but they knew more about engines than most people with certificates. Sometimes the best teachers are the ones who learn by doing, not just by studying. Marcus felt a little better after hearing this, but he was still uncertain about whether he was making the right choices. The next day during lunch, Marcus met Mr. Patterson again in the classroom. This time, Mr. Patterson had brought a small digital recorder. I want to record you playing what we worked on yesterday, Mr. Patterson said. Then we can listen to it together and hear what's working and what needs improvement. Marcus played the left-hand rhythm they had practiced. When they listened to the recording, Marcus was surprised by what he heard. It actually sounded quite good. The rhythm was steady and the timing was even. It sounded much more musical than anything he had played before working with Mr. Patterson. Hear that? Mr. Patterson said. That's the foundation, everything else we'll build on. Once you have that solid, we can start adding the melody back in. They spent the session working on combining simple right-hand melodies with the left-hand rhythm. It was challenging, but Marcus could feel his hands starting to work together more naturally. Mr. Patterson, Marcus said during a break. Some students at school said I should only get help from trained teachers. They think maybe you don't know the right way to teach piano. Mr. Patterson was quiet for a moment. Well, they might have a point, he said. I never went to music school. I never studied how to teach piano properly. Everything I know, I learned by playing and listening and trying things out. Marcus felt disappointed. Maybe the other students were right after all, but then Mr. Patterson continued. On the other hand, I've been playing piano for over 40 years. I've played with jazz bands and in churches and at family gatherings. I've learned hundreds of songs by ear and by reading music. I may not have certificates on my wall, but I know what works and what doesn't. He sat down at the piano and played a few measures of the Minute Waltz, but in a jazz style. The same notes, but with a completely different feel. There's more than one way to understand music, he said. Your regular teacher can teach you technique and theory. I can teach you how to feel the music and make it your own. Marcus realized that Mr. Patterson was not trying to replace his regular piano lessons. He was adding something different, something that came from years of actually playing music for people who wanted to listen and enjoy it. Besides, Mr. Patterson added with a smile, the proof is in the playing. If what we're doing helps you play better, then it's working. If it doesn't help, then we should try something else. That made sense to Marcus. He could already tell that his playing was improving. The rhythm was steadier, his hands were more relaxed, and the music was starting to feel more natural. Maybe it did not matter that Mr. Patterson did not have formal training. What mattered was that he was helping Marcus become a better player. Over. The next 2 weeks, Marcus continued meeting with Mr. Patterson during lunch breaks. They worked through the second and third pages of the waltz, always starting slowly and building up gradually. Mr. Patterson taught Marcus how to practice difficult passages by playing them in different rhythms and at different speeds. He showed him how to break up long runs of notes into smaller groups that were easier to remember, but Marcus was still struggling with some of the fastest sections. There were parts of the piece that required his right hand to play very quick runs while his left hand maintained the steady waltz rhythm. No matter how much he practiced, these sections still sounded sloppy and uneven. 2 weeks before the recital, Marcus overheard a conversation that made his heart sink. He was walking past Mrs. Rodriguez's office when he heard her talking to another. Teacher, I'm starting to wonder if I made a mistake with Marcus Chun's piece, Mrs. Rodriguez was saying. Marcus walked through the rest of the school day feeling heavy and sad. The words he had overheard from Mrs. Rodriguez kept playing in his mind. Too ambitious. Made a mistake. Not sure he'll be ready. Even his own teacher had given up on him. During his last class of the day, Marcus could not concentrate on anything the teacher was saying. He kept thinking about the recital that was now only 2 weeks away. Maybe he should just go to Mrs. Rodriguez after school and tell her she was right. Maybe he should ask for a simple piece that he could actually play well instead of struggling with something that was clearly beyond his abilities. When the final bell rang, Marcus walked slowly toward the music room. He had made up his mind to have an honest conversation with Mrs. Rodriguez. He would thank her for believing in him, but explain that he was not ready for such a difficult piece. It would be embarrassing, but not as embarrassing as failing on stage in front of everyone. But as he got closer to the music room, Marcus heard piano music coming from inside. Someone was playing the Minute Waltz, and they were playing it beautifully. The notes flowed smoothly and quickly, exactly the way the piece was supposed to sound. Marcus felt even worse. This was what real piano playing sounded like, and he was nowhere close to this level. Marcus peered through the small window in the music room door. To his surprise, it was not one of the advanced students playing. It was Mr. Patterson. He was sitting at the piano, playing the waltz from memory with his eyes closed. His hands moved across the keys with confidence and grace. The music filled the room with energy and joy. Marcus stood in the hallway, listening. He had heard Mr. Patterson play before during their practice sessions, but never like this. This was the full piece played at proper speed with all the emotion and excitement that made it such famous music. It was absolutely beautiful. When Mr. Patterson finished playing, he opened his eyes and saw Marcus at the door. He waved for Marcus to come in. I was just remembering why I love that piece so much, Mr. Patterson said as Marcus entered the room. It never gets old. You play it perfectly, Marcus said, feeling both amazed and discouraged. I'll never be able to play like that. Double quotes. Mr. Patterson studied Marcus's face. You look upset about something. What's going on? Marcus hesitated, then decided to tell the truth. I heard Mrs. Rodriguez talking to another teacher. She said she thinks she made a mistake giving me this piece. She doesn't think I'll be ready for the recital. Mr. Patterson was quiet for a moment. How does that make you feel? Like I should just give up, Marcus said. Like I should ask for an easier piece before I embarrass myself. And is that what you want to do? Marcus thought about this question. A part of him did want to give up. It would be easier to play something simple and safe. But another part of him, a part that had grown stronger during his weeks of practice with Mr. Patterson, did not want to quit. I don't know, Marcus said honestly. I've worked so hard on this piece, I've learned so much. But maybe it's just not enough? Mr. Patterson sat down at the piano bench and patted the space next to him. Let me tell you something about Mrs. Rodriguez. She's a good teacher, and she cares about her students. But she's also human, and humans sometimes worry about things that don't need worrying about. He played a few gentle chords. Teachers have to think about lots of things. They worry about their students getting embarrassed. They worry about parents getting upset. They worry about their own reputations. Sometimes all that worrying makes them forget to focus on what's really important. What's really important? Marcus asked. The music, Mr. Patterson said simply. And the students' growth. You've grown tremendously in the past few weeks. I've watched you go from barely being able to play the first page to handling most of the piece. That's real progress, no matter what anyone else thinks. Marcus felt. A little spark of hope. But I still can't play the really fast parts very well. Show me, Mr. Patterson said. Play the parts that are giving you trouble. Marcus opened his sheet music and played through the most difficult sections. They were still not perfect, but they were much better than they had been even a week ago. Some wrong notes here and there, some uneven timing in the fastest runs, but the basic structure was there. I see the problem, Mr. Patterson said. You're thinking too much about individual notes. When you play fast passages, you need to think. In groups, like speaking in phrases instead of individual words. He demonstrated by playing one of the difficult runs very slowly, showing Marcus how to group the notes into small phrases. Don't think 16 individual notes, he said. Think 4 groups of 4 notes each. They worked on this technique for the next hour. Mr. Patterson showed Marcus how to practice the difficult passages by playing them in different rhythms and groupings. Gradually, Marcus began to understand how the fast sections were put together. They were not just random collections of notes, but patterns that made sense once you understood how to see them by the end of their practice session. Marcus was playing the troublesome sections much more smoothly. They still were not perfect, but they sounded like music instead of just exercise. Remember, Mr. Patterson said as they finished up, nobody expects perfection from you. They expect effort and heart. If you play this piece with the same dedication you've been showing in our practice sessions, people will be impressed no matter what small mistakes you might make. That evening at home, Marcus practiced with renewed energy. He used the grouping technique Mr. Patterson had taught him, and gradually the fast sections began to make more sense. His fingers started to remember the patterns instead of struggling. With each individual note, Emma came to listen as she often did. Wow, she said when he finished playing through the entire piece. That actually sounds like the real song now. Marcus's parents also noticed the improvement. That was beautiful. Honey, his mother said. I had no idea you had progressed so much. His father nodded in agreement. I'm really proud of how hard you've worked on this. Whatever happens at the recital, you should feel good about what you've accomplished. The next morning at school, Marcus felt different. Instead of dreading music class, he was actually looking forward to it. When Mrs. Rodriguez asked about recital preparations, Marcus raised his hand. I'd like to play part of my piece for the class, he said, if that's okay. Mrs. Rodriguez looked surprised but pleased. Of course, Marcus. That would be wonderful. Marcus walked to the piano at the front of the room. He could feel all his classmates watching him. Some probably expected him to struggle and make mistakes. But Marcus was not thinking about their expectations. He was thinking about the music. And everything Mr. Patterson had taught him. He played the first 2 pages of the Minute Waltz. It was not perfect, but it was musical and confident. The rhythm was steady, the melody was clear, and the fast sections flowed smoothly. When he finished, the classroom was quiet for a moment. Then Mrs. Rodriguez started clapping, and the other students joined in. "Marcus, that was excellent," she sighed, and her voice sounded genuinely surprised and pleased. "You've made tremendous progress." Sarah, who had been skeptical about Mr. Patterson's help, came up to Marcus after class. "That sounded really good," she said. "I'm sorry I questioned your teacher choice. Whoever is helping you is doing a great job." For the first time since starting the piece, Marcus felt truly confident that he might actually be able to perform it successfully at the recital. There was still work to do, but the piece was starting to feel like it belonged to him. It was no longer just a collection of difficult notes that Mrs. Rodriguez had assigned. It was becoming his music, something he could play with his own style and feeling. That afternoon during lunch, Marcus met with Mr. Patterson one more time. "I heard you played for your class today," Mr. Patterson said with a smile. "Mrs. Rodriguez stopped by and told me how impressed she was." "Really?" Marcus asked. "She told you that?" "She did. She also said she was sorry for doubting your progress. Teachers sometimes forget that learning happens in its own time, not according to our schedules." They spent their final practice session working on the emotional aspects of the piece. Mr. Patterson taught Marcus how to make some notes sing out more than others, how to use slight changes in timing to make the music more expressive, and how to connect with the joyful, dancing spirit of the waltz. "Remember," Mr. Patterson said as they finished, "this piece is called a waltz because it's supposed to make people want to dance. Don't just play the notes. Play the happiness and energy that Chopin put into this music." As Marcus walked to his next class, he realized something important had happened. Somewhere during all those weeks of practice and struggle, the impossible had become possible. He was ready for the recital. The day of the spring recital arrived with bright sunshine and a gentle breeze. Marcus woke up earlier than usual, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness that made his stomach flutter like it was full of butterflies. Today was the day. He would perform the Minute Waltz in front of an audience. After 2 months of hard work, practice, and worry, the moment had finally come. Marcus ate a light breakfast because his stomach felt too nervous for much food. His mother made his favorite pancakes, but he could only manage a few bites. Emma chatted excitedly about the recital, asking if she could sit in the front row to get the best view of his performance. "Don't be nervous, Marcus," she said. "You've been practicing forever. You're going to be great." His parents were both taking time off work to attend the recital. Marcus could tell they were proud of him, but he also saw worry in their eyes. They knew how hard he had been working and how important this performance was to him. The recital was scheduled to begin at 7 o'clock in the evening in the school auditorium. Students were supposed to arrive an hour early for a final rehearsal and to get ready backstage. Marcus spent the afternoon trying to stay calm. He practiced the piece one more time at home, but he was careful not to overdo it. Mr. Patterson had warned him that too. Much practice on performance day could make his fingers tired. At 5:30, Marcus and his family drove to school. The parking lot was already filling up with cars as other families arrived for the recital. Marcus could see other students walking toward the building, some carrying instruments, others holding sheet music. Everyone looked dressed up for the special occasion. Marcus wore his best dark pants, a white shirt, and a blue tie that his father had helped him knot properly. His mother had made sure his hair was neatly combed and his shoes were polished. Looking in the mirror before they left home, Marcus barely recognized himself. He looked more grown up and serious than usual. Inside the school, the auditorium was buzzing with activity. Parents were finding seats and chatting with each other. Students were checking in with Mrs. Rodriguez backstage. The stage looked bigger and more formal than Marcus remembered, with a beautiful grand piano positioned in the center under bright lights. "Marcus!" Mrs. Rodriguez called when she saw him arrive. "How are you feeling?" "Nervous," Marcus admitted honestly. "That's perfectly normal," she said with a reassuring smile. "Even professional musicians get nervous before performances. The nervousness shows that you care about doing well." Backstage, Marcus joined the other students who were preparing for their performances. Sarah was practicing fingering patterns in the air without making any sound. Tommy was quietly humming his piece to himself. Some of the younger students looked excited. While others seemed as nervous as Marcus felt, Mrs. Rodriguez gathered all the performers for a final group meeting. "Remember," she told them, "this is not about being perfect. This is about sharing your music with people who want to hear it. Your families and friends are here because they care about you, not because they expect you to sound like professional concert pianists." She went through the order of performances. Marcus was scheduled to play 7th out of 12 students. This felt like a good spot to him, not so early that he would be unprepared, but not so late that he would have to sit backstage worrying for the entire first half of the program. At 6:45, Mrs. Rodriguez made an announcement that the auditorium doors would close in 10 minutes and the recital would begin promptly at 7. Marcus peeked out from backstage and saw that the auditorium was nearly full. There were parents, grandparents, siblings, and friends filling the rows of seats. The sight made his heart beat faster. He spotted his own family sitting in the 4th row. His mother saw him looking and gave him a thumbs-up sign. His father nodded encouragingly. Emma waved enthusiastically and mouthed the words, "Good luck?" Marcus felt grateful to have them there supporting him. Just before the recital began, Marcus noticed Mr. Patterson sitting quietly in the back row. The janitor had changed out of his usual work clothes and was wearing a nice button-down shirt and tie. When he saw Marcus looking, Mr. Patterson smiled and gave him a small salute. Having his unofficial piano teacher there made Marcus feel more confident and ready. The lights in the auditorium dimmed, and Mrs. Rodriguez walked onto the stage to welcome everyone. She talked about how hard all the students had worked and how proud she was of their dedication to music. She reminded the audience to turn off their cell phones and to hold their applause until each student had completely finished their piece. The first student, a 6th grader named Amy, walked onto the stage to play a simple Mozart piece. She looked tiny on the big stage, but she played confidently and received warm applause when she finished. Marcus felt his nervousness increase as he realized his turn was getting closer. The second performer was Tommy, playing his Bach invention. His performance was technically perfect, with every note crisp and clear. The audience applauded appreciatively, and Marcus wondered if his own performance would sound professional enough to deserve similar applause. The 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th students each performed their pieces successfully. Some played classical music, others played more modern songs. Each performance was different, but all of them showed the hard work and practice that had gone into preparing for this evening. Then Mrs. Rodriguez announced, "Our next performer is Marcus Chun, playing Chopin's Minute Waltz in D-flat major." Marcus felt his heart jump as he heard his name. This was it. No more waiting, no more worrying, no more practice. It was time to walk onto that stage and show everyone what he had learned. He stood up from his chair backstage and walked toward the stage. Entrance. His legs felt a little shaky and his hands were definitely sweaty. But as he stepped into the bright stage lights, something interesting happened. Instead of feeling more nervous, Marcus began to feel calmer. The auditorium full of people seemed to fade into the background. The bright lights made it hard to see individual faces in the audience, which actually helped Marcus feel less self-conscious. All his attention focused on the beautiful grand piano waiting for him in the center of the stage. Marcus walked across the stage, trying to remember to stand up straight and walk confidently like Mrs. Rodriguez had taught them. When he reached the piano bench, he adjusted it to the right height and sat down. He placed his hands on his knees and took a deep breath, just like Mr. Patterson had taught him to do. The auditorium was completely quiet. Marcus could feel hundreds of people waiting to hear him play. For just a moment, he felt a flash of panic. What if he forgot the beginning? What if his fingers froze up? What if he made terrible mistakes that everyone would remember? But then Marcus remembered something Mr. Patterson had told him during one of their practice sessions. "The music is already inside you," the janitor had said. "You've practiced it so many times that your fingers know what to do. Trust them and trust the music." Marcus placed his hands on the piano keys. He felt the familiar, smooth texture of the ivory and the perfect weight of the keys under his fingertips. This was the same instrument he had been learning to play for 2 years. These were the same notes he had been practicing for 2 months. The only difference was that tonight he had an audience to share the music with. He closed his eyes for just a second, heard the opening measures of the minute waltz in his mind, and began to play. The first notes of the minute waltz flowed from the piano like water from a fountain. Marcus felt his nervousness melt away as his fingers found their familiar positions on the keys. The left hand began its steady waltz rhythm, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, just as Mr. Patterson had taught him. The right hand joined in with the dancing melody that had become so familiar over the past 2 months. Something magical was happening. All the hours of slow practice, all the patient guidance from Mr. Patterson, all the small improvements that had built up week by week, suddenly came together in this moment. Marcus was not just playing notes on a page anymore. He was making music. The first page of the waltz unfolded smoothly. Marcus could feel the rhythm in his whole body, not just in his hands. The melody sang out above the accompaniment with a joy and energy that surprised even him. This was the dancing, celebrating spirit that Mr. Patterson had told him to find in the music. As Marcus moved into the second page, where the technical challenges became more difficult, he remembered to think in phrases instead of individual notes. The rapid runs that had given him so much trouble during practice now flowed naturally from his fingers. They were not perfect. A few notes were not quite as clean as they could have been, but they had the right energy and feeling. The audience, which had started the evening politely attentive, was now completely focused on Marcus's performance. Parents who had come expecting to hear a struggling student were instead listening to music that was genuinely beautiful and engaging. Some people were unconsciously tapping their feet to the waltz rhythm. Others were smiling as they heard the playful, joyful character of Chopin's composition. Marcus's own family was amazed. His mother felt tears starting in her eyes as she watched her son transform from nervous boy to confident musician right before her eyes. His father sat straighter in his seat, feeling proud in a way he had never expected. Emma was grinning from ear to ear, thinking about how she would tell all her friends that her brother was practically a professional pianist. In the back of the auditorium, Mr. Patterson listened with the satisfaction of a teacher watching his student succeed. But more than that, he was simply enjoying the music. Marcus was not just playing the notes correctly. He was communicating the happiness and celebration that made the minute waltz such beloved music. As Marcus entered the most technically challenging section of the piece, he felt completely confident. His hands knew exactly where to go. The patterns that had seemed impossible when he first saw them were now automatic. He was no longer fighting the music or worrying about mistakes. He was dancing with it. The fast runs sparkled like fireworks. The melody soared and dipped with grace and energy. The steady waltz rhythm kept everything grounded and secure. Marcus felt like he was having a conversation with Chopin himself, sharing in the composer's joy and creativity from more than a century ago. Mrs. Rodriguez, who had spent weeks worrying that she had made a mistake in assigning such a difficult piece, now realized that she had made exactly the right choice. Sometimes the best way to help students grow was to challenge them beyond what they thought they could do. Marcus had not just learned to play a difficult piece. He had discovered that he was capable of much more than he had ever imagined. As the waltz moved toward its conclusion, Marcus felt both excited and slightly sad that the performance was almost over. These few minutes on stage had been some of the most fulfilling moments of his life. He had worked harder for this than anything he had ever done, and now he was experiencing the joy of sharing that work with others. The final section of the piece built to its brilliant conclusion. The melody raced up and down the keyboard one last time before settling into the concluding chords. Marcus played the last measures with confidence and satisfaction, bringing the waltz to its proper ending with a flourish that felt completely natural. As the final chord rang out in the quiet auditorium, Marcus sat still for a moment, his hands resting on the keys. The silence that followed was not empty, but full full of music that had just been shared, full of accomplishment, full of the connection between performer and audience. Then the applause began. It started with his family, but quickly spread throughout the entire auditorium. This was not the polite, encouraging applause that audiences usually give to student recitals. This was genuine appreciation for music that had truly moved people. The applause was enthusiastic and sustained, with some people standing up from their seats. Marcus stood up from the piano bench and took a bow, just as Mrs. Rodriguez had taught all the students to do. But this bow felt different from the awkward practice bows they had rehearsed. This bow was earned. He had given everything he had to this performance, and the audience was giving him their appreciation in return. As he walked off the stage, Marcus felt like he was floating. The nervous energy that had filled his stomach before the performance had been replaced by a warm feeling of satisfaction and accomplishment. He had done something he never thought possible. Backstage, the other students surrounded him with congratulations. Sarah, who had questioned whether Mr. Patterson was qualified to help him, was the first to speak up. "Marcus, that was incredible," she said. "I've never heard anyone play that piece with so much feeling. You made it sound like real concert music." Tommy nodded in agreement. "I was worried about my own performance, but listening to you made me excited to play. That's what music is supposed to sound like." Mrs. Rodriguez appeared backstage with tears in her eyes. "Marcus," she said, "I owe you an apology. I doubted whether you were ready for that piece, but you proved that sometimes our students are braver and more capable than we dare to believe." The rest of the recital continued with the remaining 5 students, but everyone backstage agreed that Marcus's performance had been the highlight of the evening. His interpretation of the Minute Waltz had set a standard that would be remembered for years to come. After the recital ended and all the students had taken their final group bow, families gathered in the lobby to congratulate the performers. Marcus found himself surrounded by people he barely knew, all wanting to tell him how much they had enjoyed his playing. His own family was practically bursting with pride. His mother hugged him tightly and told him she had no idea he had become such an accomplished musician. His father shook his hand seriously and said it was one of the best performances he had ever heard by anyone at any age. Emma declared that having a famous pianist for a brother was going to be very exciting, but the conversation that meant the most to Marcus was with Mr. Patterson. The janitor found him near the back of the lobby and pulled him aside for a quiet moment. "I'm proud of you, son," Mr. Patterson said simply. "Not just for playing well, but for sticking with it when things got difficult. You learned something tonight that will serve you for the rest of your life." "What's that?" Marcus asked. "You learned that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they're willing to work hard and trust in themselves. That piece you just played, that's professional-level music. You didn't just survive it, you made it beautiful." Marcus realized that Mr. Patterson was right. 2 months ago, he had been just another average student sitting in the back of music class, hoping nobody would notice him. Tonight, he had performed one of the most challenging pieces in the piano repertoire and had done it with confidence and artistry. The change had not happened overnight. It had come through daily practice, patient teaching, and the gradual building of skills and confidence. But most importantly, it had come from discovering that the labels he had put on himself, ordinary, not talented, not special, were not permanent truth but just stories he had been telling himself. As Marcus and his family drove home that night, he thought about what would happen next. He would continue taking piano lessons, of course. He would probably perform in next year's recital too. But more than that, he had learned that when someone believes in you and pushes you to try something difficult, amazing things can happen. He thought about Mr. Patterson, who had seen potential in him that nobody else had noticed. He thought about Mrs. Rodriguez, who had taken a risk by giving him such a challenging piece. He thought about his family, who had supported him through weeks of sometimes painful practice, but mostly, Marcus thought about how it felt to discover that he was capable of much more than he had ever imagined. The quiet boy who used to hide in the back of music class had become someone who could stand on a stage and share beautiful music with a room full of people. As they pulled into their driveway, Emma asked, Marcus, what piece are you going to play? Next year? Marcus smiled. I don't know yet. But whatever it is, I'm not afraid of it being difficult anymore. And he meant it. The ordinary boy had learned that with hard work, good teaching, and willingness to be challenged, there really was no such thing as ordinary at all.